Hey everybody, it's Kelby with Fire Through Fog. I wanted to take the time to thank you personally for giving us your time to listen to these episodes and supporting us. And if you want to support us any other way, you can go to our Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/Fire Through Fog, where there's some other posts and all the episodes get posted there. So if you want to help out, spread this as far and as wide as possible, it would be greatly appreciated. Again, thank you for listening to our episodes, and I hope you enjoyed today's. Good evening, everybody. This is Kelby with Fire Through Fog. I'm here with Uke. How you doing, Uke?
Doing good.
Cool. I got my brother Drew.
I'm back.
He did his episode, so he gets to come on now. And we are here with our special guest tonight, very special guest, Donnie and Shelby Tirey. How you guys doing tonight?
Good.
That's how you say it, right, Tyree?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
A lot of
So-
people say it wrong.
How do they say
What do you
it?
get?
Tirey.
Tyree.
Add some flair to it. When you're feeling special, it's
Tyree.
Italian.
All right, cool. So you guys are down in, what is it, Greenville, right?
Kettering.
Kettering. Okay.
Dayton.
So everybody else, I feel like, is from Greenville.
Yeah, the Arcanum, Greenville.
The Arcanum group.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. So you guys have 3 kids, 3
Yep.
daughters.
3 little
Yep.
girls.
What was the ages?
10, 8, and 6.
Handful?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Keep you busy.
Yep.
Yeah.
Keep you on your toes.
Always.
Gotcha.
Always something.
Yeah. So, Donnie, you work with Armcorps Construction. You're one of our awesome electricians. Shelby, what do you do?
I am a stay-at-home mom, and as of next week, I will be a student for my associates in registered nursing.
Heck yeah. That's awesome. I respect stay-at-home moms more than
One of
anything.
the hardest jobs to have.
I do not. I would not be able to do it.
No. It's rough.
And if any dad out there says they can, get out of here. Prove it to me. Because I've tried it, and I can't even, I don't even think, like 4 hours, I'm done.
Lunchtime. Hey, you ready to come home? Because
You're done at lunch, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah. All right, well, I broke down what Fire Through Fog was for him, just being that fire through a foggy time. The fire is just, usually fire is pretty bad, can be bad, especially forest fires or anything like that. We don't want to do that, but this is shining through foggy times. A fire, usually, if it's built big enough, can shine through some decent fog. That's where our name come from. So you guys have a pretty powerful story, and I hate to say excited about it to hear it, but it's something that I think will be that next step for you guys to get through it. So,
So, I would say I'd say about the 3rd week of October, my dad got sick, and we thought it was just a little bit drinking outside a little too late in the cold weather, back porch sitting too much. And we kind of thought maybe it was COVID. And then in the back of their head, we're like, no, like they've been doing everything. Like my mom was cleaning everything, like we're good. And it kind of just one thing led to another. And we decided, my mom asked me if I would take him up to get tested. And I took him to get tested. And then we ended up taking him to the hospital, and they tested him again because we didn't have the results. And they said that he had pneumonia in both lungs and that they wanted to admit him. And my dad, being 57, fitness, was a chief in the Air Force at 25 years, like, you're not going to tell him, why don't you lay in bed and stay here? His option was, no, I'm good. So he called me. He said, do you want to come pick me up? And I said, well, they're admitting you. And he was like, yeah, I'm not staying. And I was like, I really think you should. And I pull up, and he's sitting in a wheelchair in the window waiting for me. And he was like, they just want to keep me to make sure I don't fall. And I was like, pretty sure it's a little more than that. And he was like, I'm good. Just get my prescriptions. I'll be fine. And in that time, my mom ended up getting tested too. And they both came up positive. And it was kind of crazy because they had both like complete opposite symptoms. And I stayed to help take care of my mom and dad to where they didn't leave their room. and I helped like with my siblings and then my kids. And my mom had like her set of symptoms. My dad's was more so breathing. We ended up, Donnie took my mom to the hospital. They ended up admitting her because she was so dehydrated. She couldn't get her fever to go away. She was rubbing alcohol on her, cold rags, kept puking. So they admitted her, and she asked me if I would promise to watch my dad, and if he got worse enough that I made the decision to take him back to the hospital. Mm-hmm. So me being the oldest and taking after my mom, I made Donnie go to Home Depot and buy me a Ring camera, and I put it in my dad's room, and I like set it up. And as soon as I did, the lady started talking, and I've never seen my dad jump so fast before. And I told him, I said, "It's okay. I just want to watch you as you sleep." And he just kind of rolled back over, and I checked on him a lot. And I went to check on him because I was like, I think I should take him back. And he was able to, it was weird because he was able to say more words to me. He was talking, he was sitting up, he was awake. I asked him if he'd eat for me. He said, yeah. And then I went downstairs and I set an alarm, and I slept on the couch, and I set an alarm every 2 hours, and I went back up there to check on him. He said he was fine that morning. I think it was like 6 a.m. I had talked to my mom, and she's like, how's he doing? I said, well, I'm going to go check on him. And he had asked if, he said, did you go to the drugstore and get me some medicine? And I said, well, what do you need? And he said, I need some Thermoflu and some cough drops, and can you bring me the water? It's too much to get out of the bed to go get it. And I said, I think we should go back to the hospital. And he was like, no, just give me some stuff. And I was like, I don't think over-the-counter medicine is going to help right now. He couldn't stay awake. He couldn't move. He was really weak. And I remember saying, you know, you got two options. I said, I can call the ambulance, or I can pick you up and I can put you in my car and I'll just drop you off in the emergency room. I said, but either way, you got to go. And I remember calling my mom because he said, call an ambulance. And so I remember calling her, and I kept calling her because she didn't answer her phone because she was still in the hospital. And I told Donnie, and I said, do you want to go downstairs? And he said, not until the ambulance comes. Then I'll come downstairs. I said, all right. And so I called Donnie, and I told him, and he stood by the front door, and he said, they're coming. And so I turned on the light, and he put his Ohio State slippers on, and he'd walked. And in their room, it was kind of shaded. So when he walked out, I got to see, because thanks to Donnie being an electrician, the hallway upstairs in their house lights up like a runway. So as soon as he walked out, I could just see he had no color at all. Wow. And he started to walk down the stairs, and by the time he got to the bottom steps, he started to fall back, and Donnie grabbed him. And I remember him sitting in front of the doors, and the paramedics were like covered in masks, and they're like, you know, have any of you been tested? Like, are you good? And we said that he tested positive, and they put him on a stretcher. And I mean, it was like three men, and my dad's 6'3", weighs 290 pounds, and I've never seen anybody ever assist him. And so it was hard. And I remember telling him that I loved him and that I was going to call Mom. And I asked the paramedic, I said, can you make sure he goes to the same hospital that my mom's at? And he said, he asked the head guy, and he said, yeah, we can do that. And they took him away. And I remember thinking, like, okay, like, everything's going to be fine. We're going to be good. I stripped his room down. I, like, bleached, Lysol'd, like, everything. I finally got a hold of my mom, and I told her. And I just sat there, and I was like, okay, we're good. Let's just clean. And I waited, and I kept calling the nurse's station, and they were giving me the runaround. And I had finally gotten them. We're like, well, we have to get his consent in order to give you any information. And they said, because you're not a spouse, you're a child. And so they gave consent. And I don't know, it's like, since that moment, it was like I kind of went in, like, I don't know, like, no emotion, just like face forward and just keep focusing, like, just keep going. And at that time, we were waiting to hear how he was doing. My mom got the call that she could come home. So Donnie picked her up, and we brought her home. And I think it was like 6 hours before we found anything out, and they put him in ICU. And I think we just kind of thought, like, he'll come home, like, he's going to be fine, like, he'll get better. And I remember he was feisty for the first, like, week. He told them he didn't want to do this. He was stubborn. And it was, like, I think a total of 6 weeks he was in the hospital before he passed. But we did not get to see him for 2 weeks. We never talked to him for the 2 weeks he was in the hospital. I had to go through nurses, which, because he was in ICU and it was a COVID floor of Miami Valley Hospital, every time they have to go into their room, they're suiting up like head to toe, and they're sweating so bad. And the amount of time that they're in there, when they come out, they barely have time to even get themselves something to drink, for them to go to the bathroom, to eat something, to then speak to families and give them detailed information. And we had some medical knowledge, well, very little medical knowledge, but luckily we had a very close family friend kind of help guide us through, like, teaching us, like, what questions we should ask, what certain things mean. And I'd lie if I said there wasn't a time where I became very frustrated with doctors and nurses, because it's kind of like you thought you speak to nurses and you feel like you're getting, like, this really good story, and then a doctor comes in and, like, completely, like, destroys the book you were just reading. And I called it my dad's baby book, because every time I talked to the nurse, I wrote everything down. I wrote down all the stats. My mom couldn't talk to them. It was too much. She was actually, it took her, I'd say, a couple weeks before she regained energy to, like, get out of the bed to eat, to gain her appetite. And they had told us, like, in the next couple of hours, it's going to be critical. He needs to wear the CPAP machine. He needs to do this. And there was a couple times where we kind of got excited, 'cause like, hey, we're good. And I would say after about a week, they had called us and they needed my mom's consent to intubate him. And I remember our first question was, can we see him? Like, can my mom come see him? Like, if she suits up, can she see him outside of his door? And she said, no, but if he passes, we'll make sure to FaceTime you. And I remember trying to think, like, how does that justify or make anything sound any better? And I remember my brother, who's just 3 years younger than me, he kept saying, like, it's good, like, it's going to be fine, like, it's going to be good, just, like, keep doing it. And I probably might have became the most annoying family member to call that nurse's station, because I called constantly asking for updates. I had alarms and through the middle of the night that I would wake up and call and ask for an update. And there were some mornings where we were, like, so excited and we were, like, cheering, and, you know, and then there were some mornings where I was so mad. And I think the hardest thing, my dad was, he was so into being, you know, having a close relationship with God and believing in the power of prayer and always giving and never doubting and always having faith and never going the opposite direction. And my mom kept it the whole time. And I remember just, like, getting mad. Like, one minute I'm like, come on, like, just give me this one little thing, God, like, just give us this one little thing. And then it wouldn't happen, and I would be so mad. And my mom just kept praying and praying, and it got to the point where our girls were praying, and we were just praying so much. And I got to the point where, like, I hated hearing about COVID or, like, you know, different patients that, like, walked away and they're completely fine, and them saying all these things, because I just sat there and thought my dad was healthy. He could bench press. He went to the gym like 5 days a week. He followed all these healthy diets, even though I would try to force him to eat cakes that I'd make. But, like, he followed everything. He followed, you know, he had a relationship with God. He was healthy. He was the most forgiving person. Like, I kept thinking, like, why? And I remember it got to the point where we could finally see him. And I was so excited. And it was 7 a.m. and I told my mom, I was like, get ready. I'm going to drop you off at the hospital. And I was so excited, and the nurse had told me, you know, like, you can't expect the way you last saw him to be the same way you're going to see him. And I remember we walked in that room, Donnie and I went in together, and it was like I was in somebody else's room, It was like, it didn't look like my dad. It's like it couldn't be true. And I think we had an amazing team of nurses, which my dad always gave me crap for not going to school. He knew I would go, but he wanted me to go. He's all about all of us kids going to school. There's 5 of us. He wanted us all to go to college, to get a degree, to have a career, to have a family, and I never knew what I wanted to do. And we built these relationships with these nurses, and some of them, I mean, they would come in and they would cry with my mom, or they would be excited with my mom, and we knew him on this like first name basis. And when he moved out of the COVID floor and onto the ICU floor, because he had gone so much time since having COVID, he had nurses that would leave the COVID floor to come check on him, to see how he was doing, the progress he was making. And I remember going in and talking to him, and he would open his eyes and he would look at me, and we sent recordings, and I would play the recordings that my girls would make. They're his only grandkids, and so we knew he could hear them. We knew he could feel them. Donnie would play his favorite songs, and we could just feel him, like he knew he was with us. And we thought he was getting better. It was Thanksgiving, and they had told us what their goals were, and the whole thing was to get him a G-tube and get him a trach put in, and then have him in a rehabilitation place. And so I'd started looking for a rehabilitation place that he could go to. And through this whole process, my dad, his boss and his company, he worked at Right Pat, and I'd tell you, we had a huge pack of men and women that stood behind us. His boss was with us every step of the way, reaching out to us. They brought us Thanksgiving dinner because there was no way we could think about doing it. My mom spent Thanksgiving in the hospital. And I went from running one house to running 2 houses, to making sure everything was taken care of for my mom and my dad so she could focus on that. And it was kind of like we ate and slept via the schedule and the news that the nurses would give us. You would find us around 5 o'clock, like not being able to eat dinner, like walking in circles, pacing back and forth for our ritual phone calls. And on December 2nd, he passed away. He just couldn't do it anymore. It was like once we would find a problem and we'd try to fix it, there was another problem. And his doctors, I feel guilty for it, but I grew very resentful towards doctors, because it's kind of like you go to school for all these years and you keep telling us you don't know, and you can't find it. I mean, they ran every test under the moon and stars, and they tried everything that they could, and he had good doctors, and it was hard. And I remember thinking about that day we got snow, and I had gotten a bill that my dad was fighting tooth and nails with, a bill that was through a health insurance company that wasn't our fault. Well, his fault. It was their fault. And I remember that day I got the bill to disappear. I had joked with the lady. I was like, kept telling her, I said, well, it's not his fault. It's your guys' fault. Like, you know, it'd be really nice if the next time you called, the bill just was gone. And she kind of laughed and she said, crazier things have happened. And I'm thinking, yeah, I know. And she called me and she was like, this is all that he has left to pay. And I was like, wait a minute, the bill's gone. And she said, yeah, all you have left to pay is this. And it was just the pause of insurance where they told him, like, don't pay it until we figure this out. And I was crying and I was so excited. I was like, oh my God, like, he's not going to believe this. He always used to tease me because he never understood. He used to call it my customer service skills. I could get things to happen, to disappear just by using my skills over the phone. And I told my mom, I said, you got to tell him, like, you got to tell him. And she's like, I'll tell him. And it snowed, and it was the first time I like snowed. And my girls were so excited because I got to play in the snow. And his boss had dropped off a card, and everybody had wrote how strong he was and how they knew God was behind him. And if anybody could beat this, it was him. And within I'd say about the 5 minutes that I'd gotten that card, my phone rang and I didn't answer it, and I called. And I remember my mom saying, because I put it on speakerphone, and I said, yeah, and she goes, Dad's gone. And I said, what? And she goes, he's gone. And she was crying, and I remember thinking, no, this doesn't make sense. And all I could replay in my head was the update that entire day. And I kept thinking maybe we're missing something. Like, he had a biopsy, he was doing good. I knew his blood pressure was fluctuating. And I remember thinking, like, I have to tell my siblings. Like, I have to be the one to tell them. And I remember telling my siblings, and I called my brother and my sister-in-law, and I told him, and I said, we've got to be at the hospital. And it's one of those things that's like you keep replaying the same sentence over and over in your head because you can't believe it. And we all came as a family in one, and we said our goodbyes to him. And I remember walking in that room and thinking, like, it's not him. There's no way. And I just kept thinking about it. And I grew to be so mad at God because all I could think about, my dad always said, he always gave to the church. I remember as like kids, whether time was rough or time was hard, you always give to church. You always give. And he always taught me to have faith. I mean, he watched everybody, Joyce Myers, like everybody. It's like he could never know enough about God, and he could never have a close enough relationship with him. And he always worked on it, and he instilled it in us, and he instilled it in my girls. And I remember thinking, like, I can't process this. How am I going to get my kids to process this, who prayed several times a day with us about their papa and how was their papa? And we came home that night, and I had to tell my kids, and I remember, like, it doesn't make sense. Like, it doesn't make sense. Like, I was mad. I was hateful towards God. I kept asking why. And my mom kept telling me, you can't do that. And I remember trying to, like, maybe we missed something. And right when he passed, I did not realize the amount of things that, like, pile up that you've got to do. The amount of phone calls, like, how many people you have to re-say the same phrase he passed away to, and going to the funeral home and doing all of this stuff. And I remember thinking, I've got to do it. I've got to be strong for my mom. I've got to be strong for my girls. And I think the hardest thing was when my kids asked me, but we prayed to God, why didn't he make him better? Why did he take him? And I think the hardest thing at first was me trying to explain to them and feed them information that I didn't at the time believe or get. And I think that was the hardest thing. And my mom kept telling me, like, you can't make this lose your faith. You can't steer in the wrong direction. Like, you have to keep praying. And because my dad was retired and still worked for the government, and he was a veteran, there were so many people we had to call and so much paperwork we had to fill out. And every day that I went to see my dad in the hospital, I always told him everything we did. And I always promised him that I would make sure that my mom was taken care of, that the house was taken care of, that my siblings would be fine. Like, I promised it every day. And to this day, I keep telling myself, like, I'm going to keep doing all this. And I did it, and we were on top of everything. And I made phone calls after phone calls and filled out so many paperwork. And I kept praying, and my mom kept praying. And I think I started to get my faith back when, even though the one thing we prayed for was the miracle that my dad could walk away, and obviously God felt that he belonged with him and it would be in a better place with him. Every other thing after that we've prayed for has happened. My mom never went without having to juggle finances. Everybody paid out faster and in a timely manner than they all estimated. everything was just, for a hard time, it was so easy. It was like every stone was placed in front of us after every step. And I remember thinking to myself when my mom got worried about one of the packets. And I remember saying, you know, I understand the one thing that we prayed for we didn't get. But everything since then that we've prayed for, we've gotten. Everything has fallen into place. Everything was paid off. I mean, I remember that there was things that my mom didn't even know my dad had set up. And she's taken care of. She will be taken care of. We haven't had to stress, and my mom hasn't had to panic about what if this doesn't happen, or what if this doesn't go through, or what am I going to do until this goes through. It's literally, it was just like every stone just placed, and when we lift up our foot to step down on another one, it was quickly placed right underneath. And I've always heard like horror stories of like people that lose somebody and then they're stressing because this or that isn't getting paid out, or somebody's fighting this and then they're not getting it, or it's going to take months. And I mean, I remember the lady had said, well, this will take 8 weeks and then this will take 6 months and everything. And I felt like everything was just so quick and so fast, and everybody was so understanding through the process. I mean, Donnie and I made all the phone calls, and nobody ever said, well, we need to speak to the spouse. Like, you're not going to qualify for us to give consent. They accepted it all. I learned how to fax, and I've never made so many faxes in my life. It's the hardest thing, and I think every day I still find myself like reconvincing myself that this did happen, because it doesn't feel real. Some days I start to like question my faith, and then some days I tell myself, like, in a sense, we're lucky, because yeah, my dad passed away from COVID, but my mom pulled through. I had COVID, I pulled through. Donnie had COVID, he pulled through. My youngest had COVID, she made it. Both my siblings had it. My dad's mom had it. My dad's aunt had it. And I think the hardest thing is keeping your faith and trying not to overanalyze. I catch myself thinking back to like weeks or months before it happened, thinking like, was that supposed to be a sign? I mean, a couple months before he got sick, him and Donnie decided it would be a really good idea to not only have a couple of back porch drinks, but hey, let's go clean the gutters on the roof. And he got on the roof. Donnie got on the roof just fine.
I made it. He didn't.
And I remember cooking. We were having a family dinner, and they were doing it. And you could hear him, and my mom's like, what's that noise? So Donnie's on the roof. And she goes, is that on the roof? I said, yeah, I think he's up there. And all of a sudden you hear, doosh. And she was like screaming, and she was like, what is that? And we run out the front door, and my dad is on all fours in the mulch making the most obnoxious like animal sounds, and Donnie's just standing there, somebody give me a ladder, somebody give me a ladder. And my mom's screaming, Dan, and I'm over there like, do I call 911? And I was like, somebody answer me. And I called 911. And they came out, and my dad's like, I'm fine. I just got the wind knocked out of me. And I remember, like, I go back and I start looking, and it was like, was that supposed to be a sign? Like, was that supposed to give us a heads up, like, something's going to happen? Because I remember my mom saying, like, you could have killed yourself. Like, you shouldn't be on the roof. You shouldn't be on a ladder. And it's like, I think that's the hardest problem, is trying to tell yourself that it's not a math problem that you're going to solve. It's never going to add up. It's not going to make sense, but it happened. And I think one of the best things is that we don't keep my dad's name quiet. We don't keep the situation quiet. I think at first when it happened, I was so scared, like, are we going to be allowed to talk about him? Are we going to be able to play his videos or play his pictures? And it wasn't something any of us were like, can we talk about him? It was just kind of, you couldn't talk about him and not laugh about everything. And we keep his name going every day. like he's with us. And I think my biggest thing was every night I begged him to let me know he was with me. I begged him to let me feel him hug me one more time. I remember for a while until recently, I had guilt that I didn't force him to stay in the hospital, that I didn't call the ambulance sooner, that I didn't call and get in touch with my mom to tell her that I was going to call the ambulance, that I didn't watch him harder. And I have about every week, I have a dream about my dad, and it's hard and I cry. But every dream I have, he looks so good, you know, his white hair, 6'2", strong, and he's happy. And the last one I had, every time I had one, I get to tell him something that I've held in that I feel guilty about. And the last one, I finally got everything off my chest. And for the first time, I woke up and I didn't cry. I kind of laughed because he had made a smart comment towards me. And it was like, yeah, he would have said that to me in person too. And I finally realized that he is with me. And I've, you know, looked at it as in, had he kept fighting like we kept begging him to, what he would have had to live with, and would he have really been happy with everything he would have had to fought through. And my mom had told us when they brought the crash cart in and they were trying to get a pulse, and she had prayed with him, and she told him that if he couldn't fight anymore and if it was his time, that she understood. And she told him, named all of us kids and told him that we loved him and that she would understand. And once she said the prayer and she held his hand and told him that she loved him, they couldn't get the pulse, and it was done. And so I think I've learned to accept, and from walking away from this, I do think that my faith has kind of grown more, thanks to my dad and how everything has fallen into place. And I've also learned that anything can change at a minute, but at the same time to not try, you know, putting everybody around me in a bubble and like, oh my gosh, don't do this because what if that's that one chance you're not going to make it? Or, oh my gosh, don't go running because what if you fall and you hurt yourself hard enough and then you're in the hospital? I've kind of learned to balance all of it.
Yeah. Well, that was a lot to unpack. I mean, I commend you for you're the epitome of a fire through a foggy time. Both of you. I mean, Donnie, you kept with me and kept me updated, and you were strong, and I appreciate that. I mean, before I go any further, is there anything you want to add, Donnie?
No, I just want to say thank you for all the support. I mean, through Armed Corps.
Yeah, I think that was knowing, like, having a company that kind of, that understood and was there for everything, reaching out, I think was huge. Knowing, it's one thing when you go through something and obviously not everybody has gone through it or is going through it with you, but to have people there that don't make you feel alone, even though you know that they get it to an extent, I think that was huge, the understanding. And I think, I fell apart, but I mean, Donnie kind of like my dad was the rock of our family, and Donnie just with grace swooped right in. And I think, he's filled his shoes in a sense of managing breakdowns, and when we can't figure it out, and instead of us panicking, he finds a way. But the support from everybody around us, and just knowing that even though you think it's just your family or it's just you, that there's this crowd of people that kind of come in and it's like they hold hands with you. I think that was huge.
Yeah. I mean, that's good on you guys because, one, you were reaching out. That's to me, that's one of the biggest things. I say this over and over on every episode. You're going to hear it. You cannot do life without people. And you reached out and you were giving us updates and everything. And you had us there. Like, you had me there, man. Every day I was there. And I mean, I know for every other person out there, they were there for you too. And yeah, that's crazy.
Right. I just was going to say something quick. Donnie, obviously it was hard for both of you. And, I'm so sorry that it happened, but God was with you the whole time. But for Donnie, I know he was like basically your best friend.
Oh yeah.
Like I see the pictures you post, the stories you tell us about and you share, and just going from that, and it's like another father for you, and another father figure. And so how do you cope with that and help out your wife at the same time? And it has to be hard, and your kids too. So
It is. I mean, like she said, it still doesn't feel real. I mean, we hung out every weekend. Every day we did something together. I mean, between getting the fire department called on us for burning somewhere not supposed to burn in the city, I mean.
More than once.
To running out of beer and walking to Speedway, I mean.
More than once.
Just.
That hits me because I kind of have a similar relationship with my father-in-law. So, like, I had that kind of, man, because I know how that is to have a close relationship with your father-in-law.
Yeah.
And then also having your dad as well in your shoes. It's like, listening to you talk, it's hard. It's really hard. And I'm sure it's a million times harder for you.
It's, like I said, our family is very close. I always like to say we're that functional, dysfunctional family. But we were so close. I mean, if my mom couldn't be there, Donnie couldn't be there, my dad was always there at the drop of the hat. I had high-risk pregnancies for all three of my pregnancies. Actually, we weren't even supposed to get pregnant. We were told we couldn't have kids, and we had 3. And I remember my dad, because with my first kid, we went through the base hospital. And my dad, because he worked on base, he went to every ultrasound. He went to every appointment. And with our firstborn, they had told us that they believed that she had Down syndrome and that we needed to have a special form of an ultrasound done. And I remember I was so mad because the doctor had looked at me and said, well, we want to make sure we do this ultrasound as soon as possible. In case you want to terminate the pregnancy, we need to make sure we do it in time. And I remember just like walking away like, what? And my dad said, don't listen to him. Whether it does or doesn't, we're going to love it the same, and it doesn't matter. And my dad and my mom and Donnie and I, we were all in the room when they did the special ultrasound. And she, my oldest, she had put her hand right up against my stomach when they did the ultrasound. And I guess kids with Down syndrome are missing a certain form of like a bone that's in their hand. And she put her hand straight up against it. I mean, it was the most perfect picture of her hand. And then he was like, well, that's a good sign. And he turned around and he did everything else. And he said, nope, she's fine. He goes, it was just the form of the ultrasound we used. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh. But I mean, he went to all of the girls' ultrasounds. There was more than one. And I remember when I had my last, I was like, it's a girl. I was like, Dad, you don't understand how hard it is to name a girl, because you're going to think of every other girl you didn't like in high school. And then those names aren't going to work.
I've heard that.
And he said, name her after me. And I was like, I'm not naming my kid Daniel. And he was like, no, Danielle. And I was like, nope, don't like that one either. And he was like, what about Danny? I was like, I'm not spelling it with a Y because then that's like manly. And he was like, do it with an I. And I was like, all right. And we're German, so one of the German traditions, most don't use it, you take the maiden name and you use it as the middle name for the child. And so I said, all right. I said, her name will be Danny Warbach Tirey. And he's like, I like it. And then he was like, her initials are Dirt. And I was like, yeah, that works too. But I mean, he was a friend to everybody. I remember there was times where if I didn't like somebody, he would still like tell me like, "Oh, there's no reason to like him." Well, they did this, so like he had the positive outlook for like everybody and everything. And I think one of the biggest things is when you meet somebody you're going to marry, obviously you want your family to like them. Like you want to be able to come as one. And that was my biggest thing is I wanted my dad to approve of the guy that I married. But I never, I didn't expect everything that I've gotten over the last 12 years.
Them to become besties.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the amount of adventures, the craziest things to happen. Like, it's kind of like, when you become a mom, you never think you'd hear yourself like say, don't lick that, get that out of your mouth, don't eat that, we don't touch that. Those kind of things came out when my dad and Donnie got together.
It was a straight cut, suit and tie.
That's
and
awesome.
Until he got around me, then it was game over.
Yeah.
Won't get to meet him in this life, but I cannot wait to meet him
He was something else.
in the next life. I mean, one, thank you for his service. Like, I spent 8 years in the Air Force myself, and chiefs, there's something about a chief that, like, you really, I mean, they've been through it, and he sounds exactly as what I know. So thank you to him for sure. So being in the military military brat, right?
Yep.
Okay. So do you think that, I mean, first off, where were you? Like, where have you all been?
I was born in Germany, and we lived in the Azores, which is over by Portugal. That was probably by far like my favorite place. It was beautiful. It was so nice. We went to the beach every Sunday, and we lived in California at Edwards. Our family's in Cal City, so that was kind of like a win-win. We did North Dakota. Wouldn't wish that on anybody.
Nope.
And we did Montana, which was, I'd go back there in a heartbeat. I always told
Was
Donnie.
it Mountain Home?
Yes, it was beautiful. And we almost had a house built out there. But they told my dad that if he continued to stay there, that he would have to do another tour. And his last one, he had left a month after my sister was born. And he was gone for about 7 months. And that was hard on my mom. 5 kids was a lot. And it sucked because having to talk to your dad, and he's like 24 hours ahead of you, behind you, we didn't get much time.
Yeah.
And he said, well, let's go back to Ohio. And he grew up in, is it Clyde?
Yeah, Tiffin, Clyde.
And so he's like, we have family there. So we made that beautiful trip out here.
Yeah.
Of all the places. End up here.
Yeah. Wouldn't have been my choice. But it was, like I said, a military brat. It was fun. I mean, coming here was the first time we went to a full public school. We were used to going to school on base. So it was kind of, we lived in this little gated community, and then it got to know you can't just walk all over the base because we didn't live on base. But my dad definitely kind of had the whole military structure in the house. And there's certain things I think back now and we laugh about, but at the time as a kid, getting your teeth inspected every night before bed for flossing and brushing was not fun. And telling you to go back and do it was not fun. And making your bed, just how he ran everything. And it was so funny because he was so strict, and then you look at how he was, after finally getting out, he grew his hair out, and I got a little rough, and put on some weight, and then got back into the slim cut lifestyle. But seeing him, I think, as a grandpa was probably, as a papa, was my favorite thing. I think was, like I said, he was a great dad. He was an amazing papa. Wasn't your traditional one, but it worked for our family. Our kids loved it.
So living that lifestyle, I feel like I can assume the answer to this question, but do you think living that lifestyle has helped you through, one, this moment in your life, but two, any other tough, foggy moment in your life? Having the discipline, the structure? Because I can kind of see it.
It didn't when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it did more so after. But as a kid, no. But now I can look back, and I think one of the things that I think my dad's boss had said to us when we were going through everything, I mean, he contacted us. He stayed in contact with us constantly. Who was it? The base commander. My dad, when he retired, he worked at AFIT at Wright Pat. He ran the facility?
Yeah, facility manager.
Yeah, and he actually, the current base commander, my dad and him actually at the time taught together, so they worked hand in hand. And so him contacting us personally through the whole thing and seeing, I think the hardest thing was my dad, pardon my French, but we always called him like a Billy Badass. But he never liked to brag. He never bragged about everything he's accomplished, all the medals and the plaques and everything he's done. And we knew how great he was, but it was after he'd passed and when he was sick, hearing all the stories on like how many men and women he touched and taught and affected and, helped them grow into like the men and women that they are now. It was just crazy. What did he do at AFIT? He
created a leadership school
that they now use. And he has a plaque on the wall there. And hearing the stories and just everything, it kind of puts you back in that like balancing act of don't question, if he touched all these people, why couldn't he keep touching? Like, why couldn't he continue to do his work? But one of the things his boss had said was that they're a family, that all of them, servicemen and women, that they're a family and they do for each other. And by them constantly checking in, and they brought Thanksgiving to us and they did Christmas and they came out and one by one shook our hand, and just everything that they did, I think it was just crazy to see and hear everything he did.
That's awesome. Experience from the military, I definitely can agree with all that. Like, it is one family.
Yeah, definitely.
So, yeah.
And growing up with that tough mentality that you had with him, and just kind of having that growing up, and from what you experienced with the whole COVID experience, like this whole past year has been the biggest discussion of the world right now. And people have obviously their different opinions about it, and you see it on social media all the time. And I had someone ask me today, they wanted to know that you were going to be on here, and they wanted to know how you felt about living in this environment, like, Mercer County or where you're from. How do you react to people saying like, oh, COVID's not that bad, or COVID doesn't affect my family? But then seeing your dad pass from this, disease.
So I
want to break him in half.
Right. Because you have these people who just, they're just, they don't take it seriously, but then you have the other side where it takes it, you have a 50-50 split.
I guess I've kind of found so when COVID first happened, I obviously knew it was real. Like, it wasn't like, oh, it's fake. Like, it's not really real because I don't know anybody. I knew it was real. And we took precautions. But it's kind of like I kind of had and it's funny, but it's not funny. But I always just tell my dad, because I love to bake. If anybody knows me, I love to cook. I love to bake. It's really unhealthy, but I really love it. And I don't do it in a healthy lifestyle either. But I always used to tell my dad, like, I would make things and I'd be like, you got to try this. And he'd be like, no, like, that's got this and this. And like, I got to watch this and this. Like, I'm on this diet. I'm like, Dad, what's the point of, working out constantly and following these like diets and eating all this healthy when you could just indulge in things that taste really good and just die happy? Like, just forget the diet, eat unhealthy. Like, that's what I'm doing. And I would get him to eat a bite or two, but it was kind of like, I just kind of found that balance that if we get it, we get it. I can't obviously prevent it, but in no way did I think that my family would get it. And it was like when my dad had first gotten sick, my mom was like panicking, like, oh my gosh, she's got COVID. And I was like, no, he doesn't have COVID. Like, we wipe everything down. We've done this and this. Like, there's no way he's got COVID. And then it was when he had the test and we found out he did, and then we all got tested. and each of us had something different. Like out of all of us that are together a lot, my 2 girls never got it. And I was like, how's that happen? You got 3 kids that drink after each other 24/7, and my youngest got it. So it was hard in the fact that I never posted anything and I never said anything, because I think one thing my dad always taught me was you can't fix stupid and you can't argue with it. But it kind of put me in a perspective that I am cautious, but I don't let it like flood my vision. That's all I'm concerned about. I know that as long as I'm doing everything I can to stay healthy, that's the best I can do. Yeah. But it is very frustrating to hear people say, oh, it's fake, or I didn't get it. And it's like, no, it's real. And I think it was hard when so many people were just focusing like, well, it's only if you have diabetes and you're really unhealthy and you have all these diseases that you can get it. My dad was probably the healthiest man I've ever met, who researched every form of vitamin, who did everything, constantly stayed fit and exercised, no matter how much I made fun of him for it. He did it. He was always healthy. And that part I think was frustrating, because I started looking at it. It doesn't care who you are, what color you are, what you have, how old you are. It's going to get you. It's going to get you. There's no narrowing it down or secluding it. Like, it's going to happen. But it's very frustrating to like hear people's ignorance. But I think that's kind of where I take into my dad's effect that no matter what, you can't fix somebody or change somebody's thoughts. Yeah. And it is hard, because sometimes I want to snap, but if they feel so strongly about what they think, there's no way my opinion is going to all of a sudden change their mindset. Yeah.
Donnie, and I quote, you said you want to break them in half.
It makes me so mad.
So before this, was it the same feeling?
It wasn't, to be honest. I mean, I was one of those people at the beginning, like, it's real, but it's not real. It's never going to affect me. I mean, it's like the flu. That's what I thought, to be honest. I mean, I didn't think it was that bad until it really hit home, and then it opens your eyes, and you get a different respect for it. Yeah.
But going back to what I said before in my podcast, is that people do need a wake-up call, because you just go by life not knowing, not necessarily like not caring, but like, just like, oh, this isn't going to hurt me. This isn't going to hurt anyone I love. But out of nowhere, it hits. And whether good or bad, a wake up experience, everyone needs one. And just to be grateful in life,
Exactly.
So,
story's powerful. Kelby said, kudos obviously to both of you. I mean, there's no comparison to what you guys are going through. There's nothing that I can say, oh, I know exactly what you're feeling. I'm just personally, I don't have that. But as you're talking, I'm thinking, processing all of this. And, the one thing that keeps coming up is, his faith and how strong it was. And that strikes a chord with me very strongly. The one point that I want to say, and not to make this fully spiritual or anything, but that's just who I am, and I'm going to do it because I'm not ashamed of it. But, you talked about your first daughter, right? So they said that ultrasound, she had Down syndrome. Okay. Go with me here. I think she did in that ultrasound. 100%. I believe. No, I know. Your dad prayed every night for that daughter.
Yeah.
100%. God touched your daughter that day in that ultrasound room, the second ultrasound, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When she touched your stomach, that was God saying, this is my child. So that's a powerful thing there. Don't ever dismiss that. Hold on to that. Share that, because it's true. It really is. I mean, it's straight up like cold chills and everything right now. I think that's something that God wanted me to share with you guys as a confirmation, because I think you guys kind of felt that. Mm-hmm. And wanted to share that with you. It's just so awesome to hear how strong of a faith, man of faith he was.
Yeah.
You know,
From books, and I think that was kind of the nice thing is my dad was kind of a semi-pack rat. So, he bought books in regards to spirit and faith and God and, the workbooks. And so going back and like cleaning different things in different drawers, and everything he wrote down was his feelings, but it was also stuff that he, would say on a normal basis. He, would tell me, don't think like that, or don't think like this, do this and do that. And I remember as a kid going to church every Sunday. When you get in high school and you spend your weekends with your friends, you really don't want to wake up early Sunday morning and go to church. And my dad, I remember one of the times my dad was like, God doesn't care what you wear to church as long as you're there. So I took that to the full extent, sweatpants and all. And I remember thinking like, this still isn't going to get me out of church. And he would tell me like, I don't care what you look like as long as you're there. That's all that counts. And he always quizzed us like on the way home, like, tell me something you learned in church today. And I got to the point where like, cause sometimes I would doze off. I would like take my hand and like certain things the pastor would say, I would write on my leg so that way I could like remember it, and I would do it with my imagination. And it was just, he never forced church on us. He always made it like, come on, like, let's go. And we did it every Sunday as a family. And we went to Bible school, and he taught the Bible school, and he did those things. And it's like all those things. And he did it with my girls too, but it was the way religion and his faith, he was never somebody that pushed it on you. It was like, it was so nonchalant and just kind of like carefree. It was probably the coolest thing. He never was like, no, you need to feel this, or like strict about it, like read the Bible, like this or that. It was never like that. And he had so many different Bibles.
Yeah, that's so awesome. And I know you talked about how many people he's affected. There's seeds planted everywhere for those people. Like, it's awesome. It's awesome.
I appreciate you sharing that. That was awesome. You have a letter, Shelby, that I feel honored to read, and I'm skimming over and I'm getting kind of excited because I see the medals and stuff like Air Force. All right, I've read a bunch of these letters. I'll just go right into it. So, the night of December 1st, 2020, Daniel Warren Rohrbach II, a loving husband, amazing dad of 5, a papa to 3 beautiful girls, a son, and also a brother, passed away at the age 57. Born on September 4th, 1963 in Germany to Marilyn and Francis Rohrbach. I'm saying that name right?
Yes.
Okay. He grew up in Clyde, Ohio, graduated from Clyde High School in Clyde, Ohio. At the age of 18, Daniel joined the Air Force, where he served 25 years, retired as E9 Chief Master Sergeant. Time spent overseas in foreign countries, 11 years, 11 months. Jobs while in the Air Force were Chief Engineer Manager, 4 years. Heating, Vent, AC, and Refrigeration Superintendent, 17 years. Health Service Manager Journeyman, 3 years. Shortly after retiring, he started working as a civilian at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. He was currently Chief Construction 88th CEG Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. The wars and tours my dad served in were Bosnian War, Gulf War, Kosovo War, War in Afghanistan, Iraq War, Invasion of Iraq, Global War on Terrorism, and Desert Shield, Desert Storm. While serving, my dad had a ton of accomplishments. Just some of the many medals, decorations, badges, and ribbons my dad received were Air Force Achievement Medal, Meritorious Service Medal with 5 devices, Bronze Star, Air Force Commendation Medal, National Defense Service Medal with 1 Bronze Service Star, Air Force Overseas Long Tour Ribbon with 2 devices, Air Force Overseas Short Tour Ribbon with 2 devices, Air Force Longevity Service Award with 5 devices, Global War on Terrorism Service Medal, NCO Professional Military Education Ribbon with 2 devices, Small Arms Expert Marksmanship Ribbon with 1 device, Air Force Expeditionary Service Ribbon with gold border, United Nations Medal, Air Force Good Conduct Medal with 7 devices, and Global War on Terrorism Expeditionary Medal. In 1993, he received his Associates of Science, Electrical and Mechanical Technology at Community College of the Air Force. In 2000, he received his bachelor's degree in Industrial Technology at Southern Illinois University. Then in 2004, he received his master's degree in General Administration at Central Michigan University. He was very proud of where he received his master's degree. While in the Air Force, he met and married the love of his life, Marcia. On that day, our family became one. Both having a kid from a previous relationship, the family became one and added 3 more kids to the bunch, totaling 5 children. Their children are in current ages Colton, 31 years old, Shelby, 30, John, 27, Ryan, 22, and Carly, 18. My dad was an amazing person. He had a huge heart, especially for being a tough guy. He was always willing to help and teach anyone that needed help or teaching. So many people admired him, looked up to him, and respected him. One of the greatest things about Dad was his faith in God and his relationship with God. He loved being in church, teaching in church, and working the church. Every time we moved, Dad's one goal after getting settled in was finding the best church for our family and one he could have a connection with. He always looked for the best in people and never focused on the negative. He believed everything happened for a reason. He was one of the strongest men I knew. He always looked to do what was best, not only for himself, but also for his family. He always encouraged everyone around him to be the best they could be. He was always honest and knew how to make people feel special and make them smile. He was an amazing boss, coworker, friend, and person. He had a beautiful soul. If you needed anything, you could ask him, and he'd do it for or do the best he could. He was never a man to flaunt or gloat or brag. One of the most respectful and polite men you'd meet. You knew instantly that he was a family man. Since 2004, Colton grew up and resided in Florida and Indiana. Myself, Shelby, and John went to school and graduated from Kettering Fairmont High School, and both completed college. Carly and Ryan went to school and graduated from Dayton Regional STEM. Carly is currently a freshman at University of Cincinnati. In 2009, I, Shelby, met my soulmate, Donnie Tirey III. And little did he know, Dad also met his best bud. Ha ha. In 2011, we made Dad a papa. Firstborn, Abigail Lydia Tirey, now 9.5. In 2011, we married. Come 2012, we made Dad a papa again. Her name was Raylan Lee Tirey, now 8. We named her after Mom. Last but not least, we made Dad a papa again, the last time. Dad asked me if we could name her after him, so we did. I couldn't be happier to have done that. Her name is Danny Rohrbach Tirey, now 6 years old. Making him a papa was the most amazing thing ever. He was truly an amazing and special papa. Every girl has spent many nap times in Dad's lap in the recliner and on the couch. They were definitely Papa's little sidekicks. Whether it was trips to the store, going to church, watching movies, or listening to music, or out back working, watching football games, cheering on the Browns, or swimming, taking hikes. I mean, you name it, they did it with him. They never missed a beat. He was the best papa. He truly was an amazing hands-on babysitter too. He may have had a hard exterior, soft interior for his granddaughters. He truly loved them with all of his heart, and you could see it instantly when you seen him with them. Their love in return for their papa was huge. Then, growing up living under the same roof of their papa was the biggest blessing. Every morning and night, they were able to see their papa and got all the extra time most don't get. Dad was seriously the greatest father-in-law you could ever imagine. At the beginning, he tried to be that hard, rough, mean father-in-law most men are scared of. But that didn't last long at all. Ha ha, she put in there again. Him and Donnie instantly started bonding, and from there it was a bond in a relationship that was more of a father and son one. They were truly best friends. I was truly blessed to have a married man that loved my dad as much as me. He was a role model for Donnie, one that Donnie never had in his life. Donnie looked up to his dad, went to him for advice and guidance. Dad shaped Donnie into the father and the man he is today. They did everything together. I mean everything. Best part, both were die-hard Browns fans. You could always find them together every night. Every weekend they were together with a beer and a music blaring. Whew. Not only did Dad have a son-in-law, he also had gained a daughter-in-law thanks to John. Dad loved Lindsay. He always said she kept John grounded, and Dad loved that. Dad was just patiently waiting for John and Lindsay to get married. He said they were a perfect match and that she was a part of the family and she fit right in. You knew she was a part of the family when all that lose and lost are filters, and she will still loved us. Aside from being a papa and a father-in-law, he was truly an amazing dad to all of his kids. He was always there for us any time of the day or night, whether it was spending countless hours trying to get us to understand math or teaching us to read or tie our shoes. No matter how difficult we made it, which if it was me, I usually made it very difficult, he never gave up. He ran a tight, organized ship as kids, and as we grew older, he relaxed more. I can't tell you how many times he'd rescue us, even though he probably shouldn't have. He still did it. He had the biggest heart. He was always there to hear us talk and help us in life. He always made sure us kids had everything we needed, always pushed us to do good in school and try our best at everything we did. He always made sure he could attend our sporting events and school events. He even made it to all his granddaughter's sporting events and school events. He grew up always knowing he loved us and was there if we needed him. Dad had the best sense of humor, and I mean the best. We were always laughing. Growing up, we all had an open relationship with Dad, and we could say whatever, and he never judged us. He was always honest with us. All of us kids truly cherished our relationship with Dad. He made sure he had a relationship and a bond with each of us in our own way. He made sure to have established a great father-daughter relationship with us daughters and a great son and father relationship with his sons. He made sure to instill morals in all of us. The memories we share of Dad go back to being real little kids to the week he got sick. I think us kids and even the grandkids are truly beyond blessed to really have as many memories with Dad that we truly do have. Each of us kids loved and still love Dad more than anyone could ever imagine. Dad's other greatest role and title was being a husband. He was truly the best, most amazing husband there ever could be to our mom and his wife, Marcia. Not only did Dad always care of his kids, but always his wife. He always went above and beyond. He spoiled Mom in the best ways possible. They were truly a match made in heaven. Everyone knew how much they loved each other. You could see it the minute you met them, and when you'd see them. Watching my parents as I grew up showed my brother John and I what a spouse needed to have and what a marriage was to look like, and we hit spot on thanks to my parents. My dad was my mom's Prince Charming, and my mom was my dad's princess. They had the strongest relationship and bond. They were each other's best friends. They really were. Watching them take care of each other showed all the kids what love was all about. Watching them spoil each other and handle tough situations in life, you could see they'd be together forever. They were each other's soulmates. Although some don't believe in soulmates, it's because you never seen my mom and dad together. They held each other up when they couldn't do it themselves. On December 4th, 2020, we didn't say goodbye to Dad. We said see you later. He will forever be with us for the rest of our lives. Knowing the relationship that Dad had with God, we know exactly where he's at. Dad came into this world a fighter, and he left this world a fighter. We all gained the greatest guardian angel there ever could be. I'll end this with one of Dad's favorite Bible verses, one he wore every single day. Philippians 4:13. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. That is powerful. I appreciate you letting me read that.
Thank you.
Thank you for reading it.
No problem. I don't even know where to go with this. I have no words.
That gave me chills the whole time. The whole God experience and how you kept it with you. You said you were frustrated and going through all that stuff, and you writing this, I'm sure, was probably the hardest thing you've ever done.
Yeah.
So, like you said before, you were frustrated, and your mom kind of kept you with that faith, I could tell. I mean, she was pushing you, right?
Yeah, she
Definitely kept
kind
it
of.
grounded.
Right. And how were you feeling with that whole thing, Donnie?
I was the same way. I mean, I was mad at first,
Absolutely.
but I think I understood it a little better than she did. I I mean, it's her dad.
Right.
So I could understand where she was coming from, and I tried to bring her back. I mean, it's just hard.
It's kind of it was literally 6 weeks of an emotional roller coaster. I mean, one minute you are like, I mean, you're praising God and you're like so excited because they're like, you know, like, hey, he lasted on his back for 15 hours. Like, we haven't had a pronom yet. And it's like, yes. And I remember when they had brought down, I think it was his sedation. And once they brought down the sedation, they were actually able to bring down his PEEP because he was intubated. And so they were, you know, bringing down that PEEP, which means they weren't breathing for him as much. He was starting to breathe more. And we were waiting for the update from the nurse, and I think it was like 5 o'clock. And, you know, it's kind of one of those things. It's like we only focused on feeding kids, and like us adults were like, we're not hungry, we can't eat right now. And we were in the kitchen, and we had gotten a call from the nurse, and they had dropped his PEEP and they dropped his sedation, and they said he was doing great. And I got off the phone and I retold it all to my mom and Donnie, and my mom jumped up in Donnie's arms, and they were just like screaming, and we're all in the kitchen and we're like hollering, and it was like, yes. And then it was like, then the next day, my dad ended up having to be put back on his stomach, and everything went back up, and his heart rate had went so high. And it's kind of like you would go back and be like, God, why would you take that from us? And it was literally like you were going back and forth, and it's like 1 minute I'm mad at his doctors because they keep everything so vague. Like, well, let's wait for the next 48 hours. And it's like, it's been over 48 hours. Why another 48? And then the next minute you're begging God. I remember just being on my knees, just begging him over and over and over. And I kept saying, like, I'm sorry if I'm asking for too big of a miracle. I'm sorry if I'm too greedy with what I'm asking. Like, please, please, please. And I got to the point where I didn't know if maybe I was praying too much. Maybe I was praying for too much, or, you know, was my faith not strong enough? And I would literally pray myself to sleep. And then I would wake up and be like, oh my God, I stopped praying. And I'd go back to praying, and I would fall back asleep. And I was doing it so much. And then the next minute I'm so angry at him. And I remember Donnie and my mom would tell me, like, don't say things like that. Like, don't think like that. You've got to stay focused. And it was hard. And I look back on it now, and I still catch myself here and there, but I feel bad because I look at it like his passing could have been so much more of a stressful situation than what it was. I think, in a sense, we were blessed with the aftermath on how everything worked out and how we had everything on hand to give everybody that they needed. I mean, they needed everything besides like a blood sample. And it was so many different people, and we never forgot one phone call. We never forgot one packet. Like, everything worked so smooth. And I keep telling myself, like, that's God. Like, my mom prayed for everything, and she would tell me, like, I prayed for this last night, and then it would happen today. And it's like, I try to not catch myself going like, well, why is it everything now we're praying for you're giving us? But the one thing we kept asking for, you couldn't give us. And I think I have to look back on my dad and thinking that I know he's got to be so happy where he's at. And I know I don't have to like question, you know, where is he? Is he here? Is he there? Like, I know where he's at. And he's come to me in my dreams. And the other day my mom had told me that that's God. If it wasn't for God, I wouldn't have the messages that I have, and I wouldn't see my dad the way I am, and I wouldn't feel him the way I am. And so I think I still struggle, but it's not, if anything, it's in a sense brought me more faith in what I had before everything always happened, before all of this.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So not only you have to guys deal with your own feelings and everything, you have 3 daughters that, as parents, we kind of forget about ourselves when we have kids.
Yeah.
And they come first. How is it with them?
Our middle daughter, Raylan, she has a couple, she has a sensory processing disorder. And she has a couple of other things. And so I think the hardest thing is, as a mom, is I haven't seen her process it as the way I have the other two. My oldest, it's hard. It's very emotional for her.
She just doesn't understand because we kept giving her updates like he was getting better.
It's like you keep it vague for your kids, and then at the same time, I was just like, we kind of painted this picture from them, and then within one night, they went to sleep, and us picking them up while they're sleeping to take them to their aunt's house, to then have to pick them up and bring them home and be like, Papa passed away. It was like I felt guilty because I had been lying to my kids for 6 weeks. Like, I was promising them that their papa was getting better. And I was telling them that, like, you keep praying and, like, God's going to make papa better. And some of the questions, kids always have raw questions and raw details to give you. Mm-hmm. And I think that's been the hardest part. And there's been a couple of times where I've had to, like, run from my kid, and I had to leave Donnie in the situation because I want to be like, I'm asking the same thing, and I can't. It's like I have a hard time feeding her faith when I'm like, same, like I feel the same thing. Our oldest has she has Tourette's, so she has tics, and since my dad passed, it's been kind of hit or miss. And just recently she had a really bad breathing tic, and we had to take her to the emergency room. And my youngest was scared that what happened to Papa was going to happen to her sister. And I had to tell her, like, she's fine. I promise, like, she's going to be okay. And she looks at me and she says, but they said Papa was going to be okay. Wow. And it's hard, but at the same time, like, these kids, they were his sidekicks, whether they were literally annoying him and messing with his stuff and, singing or being so loud for him. They had the closest relationship with him. But I think my middle child, Raylan, she's expressing it in a way. My dad was always into birds, and so Donnie had put together this really cool, like, bird stand thing, and so I had different houses on it, and we always got birds, and him and my dad built a pond in the backyard. But since my dad passed, we have cardinals like crazy in our backyard, and we were like, hey, there's Papa. And Raylan has this huge fascinations with birds, and she just sits there with binoculars and she watches them. And now Donnie got her a bird book of Ohio, and she's just invested everything in that. I mean, all these birds, and she's like, Papa's right there. Or, when we had a snowstorm, it was completely white in our backyard, and I heard this bird, and I went out there, and it was a cardinal in this tree, and it just kept talking and talking and talking, and I videotaped it, and I said, I hear you, Dad, and we went inside, and then it was just gone. And I think it's things like that, like they see him, but it's hard.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, Donnie, I don't know if I'm misunderstanding it. So you have your parents and everything, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So how have they been with this whole process?
I don't really talk to my parents. I mean,
okay.
When I was 18, I moved out. I had a rough childhood. I mean,
okay.
Not to get too much into it.
Yeah.
When I was 18, I was gone. I was like, do this on my own. I didn't really have a father figure or anything like that. Just who I am today is because of Dan. I mean,
yeah.
For the last 13 years, I mean.
Yeah. And not to shadow your father or anything, but this has been a father figure to you, so it's been...
I mean, he basically was. He was my dad. I mean,
okay.
Yeah, I had no problem smacking you on the back of the head or...
Yeah, my family, I told my mom about it. My dad didn't really know because I don't really talk to my dad, so I talked to my mom about it and everything, and she was there for me for the most part. She was there.
Yeah.
So...
That's good. I mean, that's awesome that you had that. You guys have...
I like how Kelly brought up the whole kids things. You guys are young parents right now, and it's a tragic and confusing experience for these kids. So for young parents that are listening right now, and anything that might be going through the same thing, do you have any advice for like how you cope with your kids, because you obviously you put them first, and you can't really take care of yourself because you're, like he said, you're full on with the kids, and they don't understand what's going on. They, like you're saying, he's fine, then he's not fine, and it's like back and forth. Like, do you have any advice, for them, or?
I mean,
It's hard to. I mean,
yeah, because like right now, they like I said, with other people taking it serious and then some people not.
Right.
Kids don't keep secrets. So, I mean, mine come home and they're like, well, I don't get it. If COVID's this and this, then so-and-so's doing this and this, and they're doing this. Like, why can't we do it? And I explained to them, like I tell them, it's everybody's different, and I think they kind of seen that when they seen how we all got COVID, and every one of us, it was different.
Right.
And I don't know if that kind of gave them that look, as in like, okay, this isn't just like cookie cutter. Like, some people get it, some people don't, some things. And I think like my youngest just asked me this morning on the way to school, she said, so COVID's over, right? I said, well, it's not over. It's kind of like, it's like the flu. It hits really hard, but then they have things that are now making it better, and to where they're loosening up. And she goes, so it's not over. And I said, well, yeah, no, it's kind of like, it's like I'm honest with my kids to a point, and then I'm not, because then it just gets a little too out of hand. I mean, even if I could go back in time and rehandle the situation with what I told them, I still don't know how I would have handled it, because I didn't want to scare my kids, but I didn't want them to know the truth. I think one of the things that was hard is when we reached the part of they did not get to go to the hospital. They were not allowed. But we did FaceTime when my dad had started waking up, and we could say things to him, and he would open his eyes and he would make eye contact with us. They did FaceTime at that one point, and I think that was really hard, but they did it once. But I think in a sense, I don't think they would have. I don't regret it. I hate that they saw him like that, but I think it gave them the better understanding of what was going on. So it's kind of like you want to shield to an extent, but you want to be honest at the same time. So it's the balancing act.
Yeah. So Donnie, I heard a little bit, but that you've kind of filled the role. To you, probably you don't. That's his role. You can't fill his shoes.
No,
I agree with that. Like, I mean, yeah, I would feel the same way if that role was open. Like, but have you found yourself in moments where you kind of forgot about yourself because you have taken on a bigger role, it seems, for her and for the kids and for your mother-in-law? Is there times that you find yourself stopping and you haven't had your complete time of mourning?
I think so. I mean, every weekend, when I go out back, I'd say the weekends.
Yeah, that's where I was going.
It's hard for me because.
Yeah. Completely, I can understand that. Do you guys want to add anything right now before I ask my final question?
I mean, I think the one thing that I've taken from this is, it's crazy. It's like I'm not scared of COVID. Like, I'm not like panicking and wanting to like cut off all communication and like hide. But I think I've learned that, your life can literally change at a minute. Like, you never know what's going to happen. You never know. And I remember when my mama got sick, she was like, Shelby, if I die, I want you to take care of your sister, like, do this. And I remember looking at her like, you're not going to die. Like, you're fine. Like, I don't know why you're sitting here, like, giving me this list of stuff you want me to, like, take care of and do. And I kept telling her, you're fine, you're fine. And, she was fine. But I've really learned to, and you got to, like, take it with a grain of salt, as I've kind of learned to, like, anything can happen. So if you feel a certain way, like, don't be afraid to constantly express it. Don't be afraid to constantly tell somebody, how you feel. And you know, to always say I love you. Like, you can never say I love you too many times. You can never hug somebody too many times. Like, you can't always think that there's going to be a forever. And when I was a kid, one of the punishments my dad gave as like a whole respecting authority in your adult was every time I said something to him, I had to say, yes, sir, I love you. And then I'd have to say, yes, ma'am, I love you. And I thought that was the most annoying, corny thing at like 15 to say. Like, he'd be like, can you take out the trash? And I'd be like, yes, sir. And he'd be like, and I'm like, yes, sir, I love you. And he's like, yes. And I remember now thinking like, that was like the dumbest thing. And now I'm like, did I say it enough? Like, did I hug my dad enough? Did I have enough talks? And now it's like, I look at everything and it's like, I feel like you can never express your feelings enough. Like, you can never spend enough time with family. And to really learn what's important is, you know, bleaching and scrubbing a house more important than going outside and hanging out with your kids. Is, you know, cleaning and organizing more important than this? Like, should you, like, kind of like it's like my whole world turned upside down. And I think one of the things that Donnie had to keep reminding me is that time in my life just doesn't stop because my dad was sick and because I lost him. I have to find a new normal. And the whole thing was I kept saying, like, nothing's going to be the same. Nothing's going to be the same. And I think every day we find a new normal and it'll never be the same. But I just kind of, I make it work. I kind of, I make sure I'm there for my mom more than I ever was before, you know, kind of give her less crap and more love. And so it's being there for my siblings more than I was before because I've realized anything can change. Doesn't mean I'm going out and spending every nickel and dime on like all these crazy things because, hey, I could die tomorrow and I have all that money sitting in my account. It's kind of like learning to spend more time and express. It humbles you.
Yeah, that's so. While you're talking, I get these like ball of just enjoyment while you talk because I think doing these episodes lately, that's kind of what I'm getting to, trying to get out of our guest is hearing that this moment has happened in our life, and to what point do we have to have these moments to realize that we got to stop taking stuff for granted in life. And that's why I'm trying to build this network of people, because it's helping me, as selfish as that sounds. I'm finding myself complaining or something now and saying, well, these guys she lost her dad. He's got cancer. And I'm sitting here complaining about this minor thing. Mm-hmm. So that's what I want to build here. And it's terrible that people have to go through this, and maybe some of these stories can help someone get through a time like this or can prevent something like this. To you, probably something that you're not sure if something could have been prevented. Maybe not. The guilt, yes, you have the guilt. Definitely shouldn't. You definitely should not. And I know people tell you that over and over, I'm sure. Yeah. But it's still going to be there. I'm sure of that. And there's not much people can say, but that's what I get excited about, is hearing that moment, that kind of aha moment, like this is where what it is. This is where I've got to stop taking stuff for granted, show my love, show my caring, take a step back, take a second to think and soak up the moment kind of thing. And I heard that. And yeah, it's obviously still going to be there forever. But hopefully you can take these steps, like being here with us tonight, and I can still see the pain in you, and I can still see the pain in you. And hopefully taking this step tonight, we can help you go along, and we're always here. So
we appreciate it.
Yeah. So my final question, do you guys have anything? So Fire Through Fog, what to you guys is being a fire through a foggy time? Like I said, we broke it down. F is the fitness, intelligence for I, R, resilience, which I see a lot of resilience, especially from you. Like, that's what I was saying with the military. That's what I kind of see. And I feel like that could have helped you out, because we've had a guest on here before saying suffering through life. Not saying you suffered, but you had the discipline and structure and kind of had to go through some tough times, not being away, being around your dad. I deployed once, so I know for my kids, maybe I'm not at that age, but messed with them. But for you, it probably tore you up at the time, like he wasn't around. So that probably, I guess, was an investment into you, who you are nowadays. And then E is efficiency. So to you guys, what would be being that fire through this foggy time in your life? What are some things that you've learned about yourself and has gotten you through this? Big question, I know. Take your time.
I think I'm trying to think. I guess I didn't realize how much I could really do and how much I could get done and how much it takes to really do everything my dad did. And so I think when the minute he went into the hospital, it was kind of like, we put his shoes on. It wasn't like you didn't have the time to like sit back and say, okay, what are we going to do? Like, what's happening? It was kind of like it hit and it was just full throttle. And I kind of seen that, like, I made it through it. Like, I remember like with certain phone calls, I was like, oh my God, like if I lose my dad, like I can't do this. Like, there's no way, like, how are we going to function? Like, how can we do everything? Like, we didn't even know half the stuff that he did to keep the house running. My mom didn't even know about some of the policies and some things he even had set up. And it was kind of like, I didn't realize all that I could take on, and I didn't drown. I did it, and I didn't do it alone. I did it with Donnie, but I guess I didn't realize how many walls we could like power through. And even though I questioned my faith a lot, I guess I didn't realize that deep down inside I did have faith. And so that kind of came out a lot. And just walking away from this, and as bad as I would play it in my head every time we got like a medical update, like, oh my gosh, if he passes, like this isn't going to happen, or we're not going to be able to do this. Like, what happens with this and this? And now I'm like, we did it. Like, we made it. We completed everything. I handled every phone call, every, waiting on hold. Like, we did it. We accomplished everything. There's not one thing we forgot to do or that we weren't able to do it. And I think the biggest thing is remembering and noticing. And I think it's the greatest thing to look at is we didn't do it alone. Not in one way did we do it alone at all. And I think that was the coolest thing, because I always say it takes a village to raise children. And even though I'm not a child, I saw like a village come around our family. And never once did it's the only thing we asked for was prayers. And if you didn't believe in the power of prayer, then send vibes and, anything you got, send it. And it's like we weren't picky on what you sent, just send it. Mm-hmm. And just the amount of people that didn't give up, that stood beside us, that held us, from a meal train. And I think the coolest thing was your parents sent us these wind chimes. My dad loved wind chimes, but my dad was also cheap. So he has these like little ones, and they were so beaten up, and I don't even think they chime anymore. And so when we got them, it was like, oh my gosh, like Dad would love these. Yeah. And they're on the back porch. And there has been several times, and one of the times I caught it on video where there was no wind, but the dad message was going back and forth. Yeah. It wasn't hitting the chimes. It was literally the air was still. And it's like, I knew he was there.
That's how we have my wife's Papa Sam, his chimes from his funeral, and it does the same exact thing. So I was going to say that could be another thing for your daughters to know that he's there.
Yeah, we can hear it through the house. And my kids will be like, it's like the same thing with the birds. Raylan will come in. Papa's taking a bath in the pond. I think he likes the new pond. And it's just like, it's the little thing it says, and it's the signs. And I think, when you look at the world right now, like you were saying, there's so much negativity, and there's just so much, sadness and horrible things. And then, my dad always saw horrible, but he always saw the positive. And I'm over here like, what positive do you see? And seeing how everybody did something for us, or set something up, or reached out to us and sent us cards, and everything. It was like everything that everybody did for us. It was like, man, I wish he could see this right now. And I have to remind myself that he's seeing it. And it's like that. I mean, a meal train, you wouldn't think they would do something, but that was 2 weeks of like our kids getting fed something legit consistently. And it was huge, you know, sending us messages or flowers and everything. It's kind of like you refill the love, and it kind of energizes and like refills up your pot on the whole like happiness in the world and like the good people. It gives you that faith. So I think in a sense we kind of walked away like re-energized in some aspects, that it's not as bad as it may seem.
Yeah, it's still out there. We got to push through and find it.
Yeah.
You know, it's suppressed now more so than it's ever been, and we just know we got to go find it.
Yeah.
So,
Donnie, you got anything to add to that?
Just faith.
Yeah.
That's it.
You guys have it, and you guys are some very strong people, and I know who that came from. I know who gave that to you, I mean, that you guys are very strong, and his story, he will never be forgotten.
Yeah.
I can guarantee you that. I know you guys know that, and he will always be there. He will always be over there or over you and have a hand over you guys. So I know, not physically and experiencing loss, I mean, of our grandmother, I mean, I know she had a major impact, so I kind of understand that. But losing a father, that's got to be hard for both
like
of
I told
you.
Shelby,
So.
I mean, she got tired of hearing me say it, but he'll never put us through anything we can't handle.
Make you bend, but he won't make you break.
That's it.
I think that was
She
the
got
hardest.
tired of hearing it.
Yeah, there was a couple phrases I get tired of hearing people say. That's kind of like, you know, just it's one way you want to look at him and be like, just stop saying it. Like, just stop.
Did you hear that one? Bend, not break.
Yeah, Donnie
darn
kept
it.
telling me.
She's like,
It was-
shut up, children.
No, there was like a lot of people. I mean, they would say like, I think the worst one was hearing it'll get easier, because every day I feel like it gets harder in some aspects. But it's like, you know, when I walked away from this, and my dad always asked me like, when are you gonna go to school? When are you gonna go to school? And I'm like, well, you know, right now I'm focusing on the girls. Like, that's full time. You know, my youngest just started kindergarten this year. And so I think walking away from everything and seeing some of those nurses, just the relationship that they built with our family and how close they were and how much they tried, I think touched me the most. That it was like, I just woke up one day and I was like, I want to go to school and I know what I want to go for. And without telling anybody, I got on and I applied and I figured what I wanted. And once I got accepted, I was like, I told Donnie, I said, yeah, last week I applied to college and I got accepted and I'm going. And it's like my dad lit the biggest fire from me, because I've never been so excited for something or had as much passion as I do right now to go to school to do nursing, because what those nurses did for my dad and how they had no problem with breaking down and explaining certain things and, you know, stepping aside and basically stepping out of their uniform to be beside you and everything. It was like, that's what I want. This is what I'm going to do.
That's pretty cool. You said something like he left a fire for you. Like it makes me think he's gone, but his fire will never be gone.
No.
That goes good with the theme.
it's awesome to hear your perspective change of, you know, nurses throughout the whole thing. Because, you know, you start out, you're mad.
Yeah.
You're legit mad because they can't give you answers, you know.
Yeah, I went from being angry, and like I told my dad, I said when I would go see him, I'd be like, they probably hate me. I call them so much. Like, I will never stop calling, and I would call, and it's like you build a relationship with them. And like I said, he had ones from the COVID floor that would, even after working so many hours, instead of going straight home, they came down to see him, to ask my mom, like, how is he? Is he any better? Is he okay? Is he doing? I mean, his doctors called us after he had passed and told us that when they came in that morning, they couldn't believe it and that they were sorry. And it was kind of like, I always knew I was going to go to school, but I could never figure out, like, what do I want to go for? Like, how do you pick one career and go with it? And I knew the whole stay-at-home mom was eventually going to run out because, I mean, when my kids are in school full-time, like, I'm not really taking care of anybody's kids. So what do I want to do? And this is what I want. And I mean, like I said, I hated academics, and my dad and I fought tooth and nail with mathematics and social studies. And I've never been so excited to go to school to receive textbooks than I have now, because I know, like, I feel he's with me, and I know he's probably sitting there thinking, like, took you long enough, about time, but he's with me, and I know he's doing it.
So earlier you said something about, you asked the question, I think you said about why can't he still touch, like, he touched a lot of people in the Air Force and everything, like, and you still were kind of wondering, like, why he couldn't still do that. But
yeah,
I think you kind of said something like that, but I don't think he's ever not going to stop, because you hear the nurses, they went and seen and were shocked and everything. This story that's getting put out, the story that you tell, he's going to touch people for the rest of their life. I mean, it's already touched me, and I know it's probably put an effect on you guys. So, and it got chills. So,
yeah, another kudos is seeing that vision. You know, recognizing, okay, what do I want to do? Oh wait, it's been in front of me throughout this whole, you know, I'm going to say tragedy, but, you know, it ended up being
a blessing in
disguise.
Yeah, and I think that's the hardest thing is, like my mom said, it was, God had a plan. And I kept asking her, like, how was this his plan? How was taking him his plan? And the more I thought about it, and, I just kind of sat there and I thought, as much as he was in the hospital and as much machines as he had been on, if he were to have kept fighting, which I know he was so tired, if he would have kept fighting, it would have been so hard. And as strong and independent he was, there was no way he would be happy. And I thought maybe God's timing was to where he wasn't in any pain anymore. Maybe it was to where it didn't put us through, because if he would have gone into a rehabilitation center, I would have been back to, we weren't with him. We wouldn't get to see him. My mom would have to go back to not being by his side. And that was hard. That was really hard. And I think he took, in a sense, to look at, even though he gave us pain, I think he took more, he made sure we didn't go through more pain or more of a nightmare of back to not seeing him and not knowing what's really going on. And I'm telling you, he would have been a frustrated man having to be in a wheelchair. Like they said, he would have to relearn how to walk. And eat. My dad was not about, and it's crazy because as a kid, and I think, even like months before he got sick, I always told my dad, I said, you're worth more to me alive than you are dead. I said, if that means that I have to put a straw in your mouth and I'll make sure your lungs keep going, I said, I'm going to do it because I'm going to keep cashing your checks. And he would always laugh and he would look at me like, no. He was like, Donnie, no. And I'm like, come on. And I think in a sense we were saved more pain. I think it was just meant to be, because like I said, when he was sick, my mom was out of work. She couldn't work because she spent every minute with him. So she doesn't have a job where you get paid even though you're not at work. And I think in a sense he had everything lined up. And at the time, it's hard to accept that statement. And I think I got really tired of family telling me God has a plan, like it's in his hands. And it's like, you just want to be like, screw that plan. Like, I want this. But had I gotten what I wanted, I don't think it would have been what my dad wanted.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, last thing I'll say is, I have no doubt that you're going to do great in school. And you'll be one of those great nurses.
Yeah.
For sure. You've got the attitude. You've got the drive now. You've got the personality. And you've got the experience of seeing what a good nurse is.
Yeah.
So
you know how
kudos.
to answer the questions when someone calls
Absolutely.
every day like you did.
Yeah. You have the grace for that person that's calling for the person that they want to
and to be
update
able to
for.
understand.
So
Yeah,
it's awesome.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Donnie.
And
go ahead, Drew.
you have an amazing husband that will be there for you the whole way. So, and 3 beautiful children. So.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Donnie, you want to add anything, man?
I think that pretty much sums it up. Like I said, I want to thank everybody for the support. Army Corps,
Always,
Yeah.
always.
Kyler's wife, Sarah. I mean, she
Yeah,
was
that's.
our go-to nurse through this whole situation. I mean,
I'm pretty sure. I mean, it gets to the point where I was like, "What's your favorite candy?" Like, I'm gonna reward. Like, I'm gonna send you like goodies. It was, I mean, my grandma, my mom's mom, had actually passed away about 6 months before my dad did, and watching my mom and my aunt go through not having any medical knowledge, and it's kind of, a doctor will give you the information, and unless you ask for more, they're not going to give you more because they're going to assume you don't understand. And watching them like not really know what was going on, not asking questions and just taking what was given was frustrating at times. And I think having Kyler's wife, Sarah, like, you know, she was there. I mean, every phone call I had, every text I had, whether it was like crying or like asking the same question in 40 different ways to make sure I understood, she guided us through it to where like one of the nurses has said, she said, "Do you have medical background?" And I said, "To an extent." And she said, "Because I'm just going to assume you don't." And she goes, "So are you just wanting to know, is he okay? Is he having a good day or a bad day? Or are you wanting to know the stats and the blood result, everything?" I said, "I want to know everything." And she said, "Okay." And she goes, "Because we don't know what you guys want to know. So we're not going to give out information if you're not going to retain it." And we had that advantage of when they're saying peeps and everything, it's like, okay, I know what it's supposed to be. I know what this is supposed to be. And, you know, white blood cell count, like, you know, how high is it supposed to be? Well, it's supposed to be through this range, and he's really high. We need it to come down. And having all of that,
the support system was
made it to where we understood where my dad was at, and we understood how hard he was fighting and how big of a hurdle this was. And if it wasn't for, you know, the medical background and support that we had, I don't think we would have truly understand to the extent of what COVID does and how hard he was fighting. It's like you can look at him and you could see that he was fighting, but we understood how hard his body was fighting.
It would have been way more stressful without that.
I feel like we would have been a lot more lost.
Yeah.
So we, like I said, we had all forms of support, from medical to just listening to us to doing stuff for our family, for our girls.
Helping you understand.
Yeah. And it's like you always know who's there, and then it's when that light shines, you like see everybody who's really there.
Yeah. That is awesome. This story was powerful.
We appreciate you having us.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Do you guys have anything else? This is, like I said, this is you guys.
I think that's it.
All right.
Yeah.
You guys got anything? Drew? Uke?
Good.
All right. Well, hey, again, thank you for the story. It was very powerful, and he will never be forgotten. I'm sure of that and can promise that. So have a good night, everybody.